So I still think this is the end of the world. This is the end of the timeline. Restart.
Yeah, it's giving more and
Because
more
like
vibes of that.
and somebody, I forget their name, somebody in the comments on that thing pointed out the Ouroboros
Oh,
in
the
this
logo.
logo,
Yeah, that was the
which
circle.
which I didn't notice beforehand, which is dope. But with Ganon having that flowing red hair, the same glowing red hair that Demise had,
The
that
dreadlocks.
no other Ganon had, like this is just, to me, it has to.
Oh, 1000%.
It fucking has to be the end cycling back.
And then Ganon's just back too. Like I'm curious how
But
that's gonna work.
can we run back to that point
you
that
could do that.
right
You
here,
have control.
right here. This is what did Zelda say?
Let's listen.
I know why I am here. It's something only I can do.
Something only she can do, which generally she is the goddess of time.
Oh, is she?
Well, she's the reincarnation of Hylia, the one that essentially, if you go back and look at Skyward Sword, forsaked like the entire world. Like the world was darkness, people were getting ripped apart, and she ripped ground and raised it to the sky and said, "These people I will save."
Oh.
And now Zelda's like,
and that's why in the sky in that
something
game.
only I can do.
And that's ripped
And it's like,
the ground.
I don't know. I'm really buying into. I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid at this
Casey's
point.
selling himself on the cycle.
Listen, man, I'm sold on my own idea. Like,
I
think that's what's gonna happen.
With the marker writing on a whiteboard, like with pins and everything.
Yeah,
and
I'll do it. I'll do it. But I mean, I'm sure there's other people out here that are kind of saying the same thing. But like, this has to be. There's nothing else that makes sense to me.
No,
with them confirming that this is the end of all of the timelines, and it's just kind of looking like no, they did. They did.
Yeah, it's convergence.
Breath of the Wild confirmed that was the convergence of the timelines.
Not necessarily end.
So where do you go from there? Everything converged, but now the way that this game's going, everything's starting to look more like Skyward Sword. It's starting to like go back to how that was, back into the sky, and it's like, to me, like that has to mean the end of the timeline is the beginning of the timeline,
and the beginning of the timeline is the end of the timeline.
Yeah, and also,
so this is a prequel.
I feel like Nintendo. This is also, yeah, it's a prequel sequel. Like, well, I mean, timey-wimey bullshit of it's all cyclical. It's going to keep going around and around and around, blah blah blah, never ends. Minor differences, never ends. But this also might be this is another one of my thoughts. This is Nintendo trying to get out of the new Zelda. Where's it on the timeline?
Yeah, the new where's the
like, so this is their way of like being like, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's all a circle now.
Yeah, no matter what.
So like, does it matter where it ends up at this point? If it's
people will
somewhere,
people will still
people will still care, but it's so much easier to write it off as like a whatever because they have a definitive beginning and end.
True.
That's what people want. They want to know what happens at the beginning and the end. And they gave the beginning. And people are still like, okay, well, where does this Zelda end up? Where does this, what's going on? So then they're like, okay, fine, Breath of the Wild. It's the end of all the timelines. But people are still asking, oh, well, what does that mean? What is this? What is that? And it's like, okay.
I'm hoping
fine. I really think this is, well, I'm sure there'll be some sort of in-game explanation.
Because Breath of the Wild, the one complaint I have is, sure, they said that was the a convergence of the timelines. But realistically, in the actual game, they really didn't give you much legit explanation of how all these timelines converged.
So they didn't give an explanation, which maybe they're leaving that open to either ambiguity. I mean, I'm not optimistic
for a
this
game
will answer it. I'm expecting either ambiguity of just, hey, yeah, time collapsed because different timelines can't sustain themselves.
But
They're
like
going to collapse
really
eventually, or there will
sense.
be a game that you maybe hop between the different timelines. And
that
like
would be wild.
You're the link that converged them all, and you're hopping between them, all of the differences, all these different worlds. That would be a great game.
That would be
Nintendo. Pay me if you make that.
That would be the Kang Secret Wars of fucking Zelda.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
Just got a hold of Zelda's powers, and he fucking is destroying every timeline.
Yeah, starts fucking with
so
it.
you have to jump timelines. Timey-wimey bullshit, as you said.
yeah, no, exactly. So like,
that'd be absolutely wild.
There's an opening there for a fantastic game if they could make it, but it's also ambiguous enough that like timelines converge. Like that's something that anyone that loves any sort of time travel, it's like shit just collapses. Yeah. Like it can't sustain itself forever.
What just annoyed was they didn't really acknowledge it in game. Like they didn't. Sure, they mentioned it outside of game, but in game we didn't get much. Like this is because clearly that wasn't the story they wanted to tell. Like I know they didn't want to tell that story,
because the time already collapsed before this. That's the one thing that we have confirmed. It collapsed before this,
but we don't know how.
And before this iteration of Link was in his original form. Because, the whole thing about Breath of the Wild is like, oh, you failed like 100 years ago or something like that. Whatever, how many years ago. But at that point, the timelines were already converged.
No, I know.
So
it's annoying that they didn't explain it. I want details.
It's very annoying. I would love an explanation. They're not going to give one. Unless they make a game that you're literally hopping between the realities.
So I worry in this game we're not really going to get a direct... time is a loop. Like it's gonna be heavily implied, like we're seeing in the trailers, because people knew that this was like the end of the timeline for Breath of the Wild before the game even released. The same way,
because there was a lot of little details of like, oh, there's Lon Lon Ranch from Ocarina of Time. Oh, hey, here's these things from Majora's Mask. These symbolisms. Here's XYZ from this Zelda. Yeah, no, I get that.
So
but
I just worry that they're gonna do the same here, where like it's obvious, like from if you're paying attention to the this shit, like it is. But if not, but they're not gonna really give it to you.
So I'm not that worried about that because it was a little wishy-washy, sure, with Breath of the Wild. But if you look back at Skyward Sword, the way that game played, you knew that was the beginning. Like you forged the sword yourself. You were in the sky.
You gotta alert that we're alive.
Ganon wasn't a thing. It was Demise, and you didn't know anything about him until you went to fight the Demon King on Earth. So I feel like maybe they won't make it super obvious, but I feel like the end of the game, it'll confirm or deny what I'm
there'll
saying,
be a scene,
right? Like it's either going to be like a very obvious, no, this is history repeats itself, we're going back, or it's like, nah, it's just normal Zelda game.
Looking at this wall, I just realized, just looking at this wall, this feels also like that, because on the right, is that Demise or Ganon? It looks more like a Demise.
It looks a lot more like a Demise. He's a big boy. Ganon's generally
human size.
And aside from his boar form, has been like a normal human size. But there he looks half giant. He looks big.
Hey, shout out to it's hard to see. Ali K. Thanks for subbing.